On today's video, I'm going to be showing an easy 5-minute modification you can make on your guitar to elevate it to the next level. Hey friends, welcome back to the studio. Today I'm really excited because I'm going to be tackling a mod that I've never actually attempted before, ever. I thought I did all the mods possible, but I haven't actually considered one mod that I can do that's been sitting right under my nose. And today I'm going to be doing that on this guitar. This is an Epiphone SG Special. And the mod that I'm going to be tackling today involves this specific area. Yes, the tailpiece. For those of you who don't know, these guitars don't have a bridge. They just have a tailpiece that acts as a bridge and a tailpiece in one. These were early designs and they weren't necessarily the best. I think over time they improved things by separating the tailpiece and bridge to give the guitars better playability, better intonation options, etc., etc. Today we're going to be looking at a tailpiece that has been designed to improve the basics that you get with these standard tailpieces. The product in question is called the Savvy, which is made by the good folks over at Music City, and they've put a lot of time, energy, and R&D in developing a better tailpiece. Now, the reason why I'm so excited today is because I've been hearing so much chatter on YouTube about these tailpieces that I had to check them out for myself. Could they really be that much better than what I already have on my guitar? A lot of people seem to think so. So I wanted to take one for the team, get one of the units so that I can put it onto this guitar and we can evaluate it for ourselves. Now, these units are not inexpensive, but I have to tell you, they're extremely well made. When I opened it up and I took a look at it, it was beautiful. The unit itself is made of nickel, and it's actually polished nickel, and it looks like a piece of jewelry. It's just amazingly well polished, and it is extremely light. So already just by touching it, I can already tell you it feels miles better than the standard chrome units you get on most of these guitars. Now, why would you even need to change your tailpiece? I'm going to start from the basics so you understand why the Music City version has been developed. So back in the day, these were kind of standard on the older guitars. And what usually would tend to happen over time is that the tailpiece would tend to shift and tilt forward because of the fact that the strings are wrapped over the tailpiece. And because there's a gap between the post, the top of the post, and the bottom part of the post where the tailpiece slides into, it has the ability to shift like this if you put pressure on it. So that is not ideal because you do want the tailpiece to remain as flat and parallel to the top of the guitar as possible. And over time, what you can also experience is the sitar effect. And what that is when you're strumming the strings open, you get to hear the primary note, but then you have like a sitar sound happening behind the note. And when you hear that, 9 times out of 10, it's actually caused by an issue here, rarely up there at the nut. So it's usually down here. And that is a combination of things, the fact that you have that tilt, and oftentimes also the way the actual top of the tailpiece is carved out. The strings that go over the metal part doesn't have a clean break and causes that sitar sound that we don't want to have. So if you're experiencing any of those symptoms, look down here. So this is mainly why the Music City Bridge was developed, to improve upon these issues that are common on these guitars. Now, in order to do a fair comparison, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be replacing the stock tailpiece on this guitar. I'm going to install the new tailpiece. I'm going to keep the strings on, and we're going to record a before and after open string, just unplugged strumming of the guitar so you can hear it for yourself before with the stock bridge and after with the Music City Bridge installed. Now, if we take a closer look at the Music City Bridge, you'll notice a couple of things. First of all, that the milling on the tailpiece is really accurately made. It's a little subtle, so it's a little hard to see unless you're looking at it in the proper light, but you do have a little zigzag milling done on the top of it, and that is where you get the accuracy of the intonation and the clear tone of the string, so that if it's really made the way it should be made, you won't be getting any of that sitar effect anymore. Now, you still do have the hex screws just behind the notches for the posts, and that is because you still need to adjust it to be able to get the intonation right. So this is pretty much standard. You can also purchase their locking studs. Going full Monty here, I'm going to be swapping the tailpiece as well as the studs in this video. So when you initially look at the studs, they kind of seem very similar to what you would find on other guitars. But if we take a closer look, you'll notice that the top screw portion and the shaft on the bottom can actually be separated by unscrewing them from each other. And this is where the magic happens, folks, because by being able to do this, you can actually snug down the tailpiece between the top and bottom of the shaft. And the fact that it's snugly set between the top and bottom of the post here means that the vibrations transfer directly into your guitar. There's no looseness, there's no gaps, so it's very, very snug. Everything stays in place, which should translate to better tone, better sustain, and hopefully better feel. So these locking studs also come with a set of tools, and they even went as far as to etch on the inside of one of the tools a little grid that can be used to measure the height of your stud so that you can place them back in the right height once they're in place. You don't have to worry about having a ruler with you. You can do them all with these tools. It should be a rather quick and easy installation. One thing I'd like to comment on is the quality of the old components compared to the new. I can clearly see a difference here in overall manufacturing standards. I can see that the post, the old post, has a divot at the bottom of it. You can see that it's clearly not manufactured to the highest tolerances. Does it do its job? Yes, I'm sure it does. But I mean, it just shows that there is a difference here in terms of the quality of the components and materials being used, as well as the tolerances. Now, if we look at the bridge off of the Epiphone, you can see from the top that it does look like a really full bridge, but when we turn it over, you can see that a lot of the material has been, routed out at the bottom, and it's not necessarily a solid tailpiece like you would imagine it to be when looking at it from the top. The quality of the components, the quality of the final results is very important to me. And I also noticed that when I turn the hex screws here on the Epiphone tailpiece, you can feel some wiggle room in there. So they're not necessarily, using the highest tolerances. It's to be expected. A lot of manufacturers do this. It's not uncommon to see this. I'm not saying it's, a defect or anything like that, but there is a substantial difference between the old and the new. It might not seem like a big thing, but overall, I think all these little factors add up. I think the tolerances make a huge difference, and it also has a lot to say in terms of how long something like this would last on your guitar compared to the Music City tailpiece that we're going to be swapping in. So I'm really itching to get this done. Let's put the guitar on the workbench so we can get these installed. Once the old strings and tailpiece have been removed, then all you really need to do is screw in the new posts. And I loosened the top portion just a little bit so that we can put in the new tailpiece easier that way. Couldn't be easier. This is perhaps one of the easiest mods I've ever done. And I'll adjust the height later on once I have the strings back on so that I can adjust them to taste. So once that's in place, you can just slide on the new tailpiece. And what you'll want to do is hold that in place while you finger tighten the top screw so that the tailpiece then stays in place. And as you can see already, I can't move it out of place. It's snug in there. and I can crank it down even further, but for the time being, I'm just going to leave it finger tight till I get the strings back on, and then I can adjust the height and the intonation as I see fit. And that's basically the extent of how complicated this mod actually is. Like I said, pretty much the easiest mod I've ever done. So let's do a low-tech comparison of the old and new tailpiece. We'll do this very simply. I'll just strum out a couple of chords. I'll record the chord pattern in the same way for both samples. I'll let the chords ring out under my fingers till I can no longer hear them or feel them vibrate. And then we'll move on to the other one. And maybe that way you can tell whether or not you can hear a difference between the two. So listening back to those clips, I didn't hear a huge difference, although I did feel that the Music City Bridge was slightly brighter, and it seemed that the chords rang out a little bit longer under my fingers. That being said though, I did feel a substantial difference with the new tailpiece. Unfortunately, that's not something you can actually hear, but I felt that the guitar was much more snappy. It felt like when I was hitting the strings, I would get the feedback in terms of vibrations through the guitar much more immediately than I did with the old tailpiece. And that could be due to the fact that the new tailpiece definitely allows us to snug things down a lot more, which would ultimately transfer the vibrations and resonance through the guitar better. So that's something to be said for the new Music City Bridge. From an intonation point of view, it really was a cinch. I basically put the new tailpiece on the posts, wrapped the guitar strings around it, and it was basically dialed in. I thought I would have to struggle with it a little bit more and play around with it and tweak it, but it was really pretty much dead on. So whether or not I got lucky with this bridge, or they're all like this, I don't know, but I didn't have to struggle with it at all. Did a really nice job. Hey, if you're looking at getting the most out of your guitar, I would say taking a look at this Music City tailpiece upgrade for your guitars is something worthwhile doing to see if it's right for you. I like it. It's going to be staying on my guitar. And it's the type of modification I probably won't be overlooking in the future. Hey, thanks for watching this video, everyone. I do appreciate your comments. Please feel free to leave them down below. Consider subscribing to the channel because there's more videos coming up for your enjoyment.